actually record this. And
Oh, great. Thanks.
I'll upload it as an unlisted video, and I'll give you a link, and you'll be able to have it for your reference.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I've just been revisiting my Neil Kinsley hands-on agronomy book as well.
That's the one I was going to say. Yeah, if you reread that book and go through this, then it'll probably make a lot more sense. Yeah.
Don't tell my wife that I've actually got 2 copies of the book. I haven't read either of them to the end, but yeah, I ought to.
Yeah, that works. His kind of outlook works very well looking at these tests for sure.
It's just the pounds per acre. Oh my God.
Yeah, at the moment here, you're not on pounds per acre, right?
No,
You're on ppm.
No.
So
but in the book, yeah.
Oh yeah, in the book, yeah.
That's a bit hard going in that respect, but yeah, hang on.
Yeah, for sure. Okay,
right,
so
I've printed that out.
You've got this thing in front of you, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice one, cool. So I've compiled all your lab data here.
Yes.
And then down at the bottom,
yeah,
there is a kind of deeper analytics sheet, which is blurry for me right now.
Yes.
Not loaded.
Is that something you could share?
Yeah, you should have it.
Well, I've got it on PDF, but I mean, with regards to formulas and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, I can share it, yeah, if you want.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Why is it blurry?
For some reason it's not working. Maybe I have to stop share and then try again.
Is it PDF for you on your computer, Larry?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to export it again. Maybe it just saved like this for whatever reason.
Weird, because in the little thumbnail I can see that it's completely fine.
That is weird. Do you want to send it to me, or point me to the link?
I think you've already got it. You've got it in your emails.
Hold on.
Try and open it.
I'll try and open it myself. Where's Clyde? Because it's going to be in Clyde. Clyde and Adam, deeper analytic. Yeah, it works fine for me. So I'm going to download it. And downloads, save, and then open. Yeah, it worked fine for me. So I'm going to share my screen, and then you can talk over it.
Yeah.
There we go.
So first of all, Clyde, the targets on here are loosely kind of Albrecht targets. They're like Kinsey-baked targets. And they're also kind of balanced with land crop targets, which are kind of applicable, I think, to the UK. We could change these targets at any one time if you just don't want them there for any reason, if you see anything wrong with them. But for native soils or like ag soils in the UK,
right,
I just leave these here. You know, targets. We're not necessarily ever going to achieve them, but they're good to aim for in some cases, right?
Yeah.
So TEC is the
exchange.
The exchange capacity, you know that.
Yeah.
And
it's not CEC because it includes all of it, as many of the elements as you can. Yeah. Exactly.
The total exchange capacity, which is figured out from all the data, or most of the data on the sheet. So it's something, this one's called the Brookside Labs formula, right? Which is from Kinsey, worked at Brookside Labs for a long time. That's what they used to come up with this. It's not the Albrecht formula. The difference there is it takes into account other bases and exchangeable hydrogen. So exchangeable hydrogen is just a calculation of your pH. And in these soils, your pH is relatively low, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We got like 5.3 to 5.9. So that's pretty low. And so the exchangeable hydrogen is relatively high. We got 36, 27. So the lower the pH, the higher the exchangeable hydrogen, the higher because that exchangeable hydrogen is analogous to acids on the exchange sites, right?
Right.
Hydrogen being a cation. So then other bases, they are other alkali components, other base components to the soil, other than the major cations. So your calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, and then they just group everything else as other bases.
Right.
So that whole balance of major cations, other bases, and exchangeable hydrogen gives you your kind of pH. And it also is how we derive your total exchange capacity. So these soils are very low. They're some of the lowest soils I've seen in the UK, right? You probably know that. They're very low fertility. Anything around 5 is pretty damn low. 10 is still kind of low, but not so bad. And then 15 is kind of the arbitrary target on this sheet. Again, if that's not, if you don't think that's achievable, we can change that.
You haven't done, just an observation, soil texture is not on here.
Oh no, sorry, we didn't know you wanted
Oh,
soil
right.
texture breakdown.
If you could, is that much money more?
Daniel, do you know the charge? Because John Williams gets it every time, doesn't he? But we just didn't know that you wanted it, Clyde. Sorry.
No,
Did we know? Did you ask for it? Did we ask for it with Logan?
I didn't come to the conversation actually, but I just assumed it would be there. But
no, it's a separate charge with Logan Labs. So I'm saying it's an extra 30 quid per sample for texture.
All right. Okay.
We can request from them. I think they still have the samples. We can.
They should still have a sample, yeah. So it should be doable, retrospectively.
Yeah, no, not to worry, because I've worked it out with this.
Okay, fine. Very good. Self-made.
I got a horrible feeling that with the SFI, the SAM ones, they're asking for soil texture, and I would imagine that would need to come from a lab. So I don't think the jam jar test will be good enough.
No, but
for some reason.
Logan does soil texture. It's the physical with science fraction. That's what they call it. And it's an extra 30 quid to do that.
Okay, right. Okay, we'll have a look at that. Yeah.
So obviously that's super important, but a big consideration for me is what I do is if you scroll down a little bit, Daniel, there's something at the bottom that says bulk density, grams per cubic centimeter. So it gives you an idea of the bulk density of your soil. And I use that for a kind of weight calculation. It's obviously not soil texture, but it does give you an idea of how heavy the soil is. And so an acre slice is usually calculated in America at 1.2 grams per cubic centimeter. That's what they're kind of calculating their soil as averagely, but soils can vary really widely from that. I've never seen a 1.2 in the UK. I've only ever seen up to 1 gram per cubic centimeter. So that's the heaviest soil I've seen. Maybe 1.1 is the heavier. So this is a relatively, well, it ranges from light, I'd call 0.6 light, to maybe the beginning of medium at 0.8. So that is how I do my weight by weight calculations from this test. I use that.
Right.
Okay,
so that's a measure of compaction as well, isn't it? So the more compact.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess. But they basically just weigh a cup and then figure out they first dry it back right at 100 degrees for 24 hours. Once they haven't got any moisture in there, or they think it's as dry as they need it to be, they weigh a US cup and then figure it out from that.
All right. We're doing work, or I'm doing work with the Soil Association Exchange Program. So we're going on to quite a lot of farms on behalf of Lloyds Bank, and they're sending technicians out to do soil tests. And they're doing cores, and then they're doing best assessments and all the rest of it. But they're just coming up with pH, soil organic matter, soil density, and a VES. Yeah, that's and then we've got to work on that, come up with a report. So that's been quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, depending on the kind of incorporation of the organic matter upper mulchy layer, if there is one, into the soil, obviously this bulk density is an average of that 6-inch like core you've taken. Sometimes it can vary quite wildly from the top few inches, where the organic matter makes the density much lighter, and therefore it's easier to affect those 3 inches, where it's got more organic matter, than down below where it's maybe a bit more heavy. And maybe at the heavier end like 0.8, and it's probably got a bit more clay or sand or silt or whatever. So it's just something to take into consideration. So if you go back up, obviously, well, no, you can stay there actually, Daniel. No worries, stay there. Let me move my little window. So obviously you have your ppm targets, and your ppm are obviously parts per
Yes.
million, or
Yeah.
we're now just to milligrams per kilogram. But
Mm.
depending on your bulk density, the density of your soil depends on obviously how, you know, how much soil you've got there. And so the ppm and the bulk density is important to consider to figure out what this new kind of thing I've been looking at, which is the how many grams per cubic yard or how many grams per cubic meter of your soil do you have
Right.
of the minerals there? Yeah.
Right.
So on these arbitrary targets, I used the heaviest bulk density that we saw in these soil samples. So 0.8, use the heaviest bulk density there, just to
Yeah.
give you an idea. The
Yeah.
targets would take you to 1.8 kilograms of minerals per cubic yard of soil, right? And
Right.
you're way down about half of that. So this is where maybe in your soil where you'd expect, you know, much better results. Well, over probably, you know, look, if we look at calcium here, we've got 1.2 kilograms of calcium, and then down here in rape field, we've got 0.2 kilograms of calcium. So I'd imagine in these fields, rape grows really small, right? It's kind of diminutive. It's not as tall as some other fields, you know, with higher calcium.
No. No.
And so getting this number up usually makes the you know, structure of the plants bigger. You know, if it's their legumes, it makes them nodulate more, because
Yeah.
calcium sets that structure for nodules, or, you know, whatever it is, the
Yeah.
aerial parts of the plant. So I think this is really useful to keep track of, because usually around 1.8, 1.9, 2 kilograms of minerals per cubic yard, you start to see really good results.
Right. Kilograms per cubic yard.
Yeah, if you just times it 1 by 1.3, you get kilograms per, sorry, grams per cubic meter, or grams per cubic yard, yeah. And then it's broken up, so it's all these added together, you know, like calcium, magnesium.
Sorry, what was the multiplying factor to go with grams per cubic meter?
It's 1 point, am I right, Daniel? It's 1.3, around there, maybe. To forget from cubic yards to cubic meters.
It's not a lot, because a yard is what, 98 centimeters? How much is
Yeah,
it?
I think it's 1.3. That's what I have in my head. I'm pretty damn sure it's around that. If you times this 1,845 by 1.3, you'll get to grams per cubic yard. This sheet is like this because it's from my mentors who are in like America. So it's all in America. It's not all in American. It's in ppm, but this bit's in grams per cubic yard instead of cubic
1.3.
meter. Yeah, so 1.3. Yeah.
Right. So this is something you've taken off the results. It's not a thing that would come through on request or anything.
No, it's not something from
No, but if
not from Logan Labs. No, it's just something
No.
I use for these extra levels of
Right.
analytics. Yeah,
Right.
just to give me a
Okay.
quick look.
Yeah.
Because if you just compare ppm to ppm and you don't take into account the density of the soil, then you can miss a lot of information there about the you know, the abundance of mineral nutrition in that soil. Another thing to obviously with your texture analysis is how much is a big fat stone, you know, and how much there's a dilution effect there. Because obviously the full density can change that, what that ppm actually means, and so can stone content.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah.
So they're well worth keeping track of.
Right.
Okay, so then if we scroll back up, Daniel, to where you can see the targets.
Once again.
Sorry, this is really annoying because mine's jacked. Yeah, so I mean, across the farm, you have very low sulfur, which is obviously really common in the UK. You know, like sulfur levels in soil, natural, native soils are usually quite low, and quite low levels of phosphorus. What's more important, almost, is on the other sheet. There's another sheet called the saturated paste test.
Yes, I did wonder about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the exchangeable test, as you know. This is more like long-term reserves in the soil, of which there isn't, you know, a massive amount with these low TEC soils. The other one is how this, you know, exchangeable test affects the water soluble or the soil solution, you know, the water soluble nutrients.
Right.
So how is this you know, getting into soil solution? And on both these tests, the saturated paste test and the Malic 3 test, the sulfur and the phosphorus are quite low. So on the
Right.
saturated paste test, maybe a target would be to try and bump it up to 2 ppm, 3
Yeah.
ppm would be great. At the
Yeah.
moment, I think it's below 1, right? In all the samples
Right.
from memory. I think it's one of them was like 0.7.
I'm just looking at
And so that is really the job of phosphorus solubilizing bacteria at scale now, you know, unless you're not going to, I'm sure you're not working with farmers that are using loads of triple superphosphate or anything like that. So
I came
it's
across
going
one
to
the other
be
day.
try and use the extracts, try and use the biology,
Yeah.
try and use cover crops to solubilize phosphorus, really, you know. And obviously we can build background levels with soft rock phosphate or something like that. Since it's an acidic soil, that is
Yeah.
maybe an option, or
Right.
compost, or you know,
Yeah.
organic inputs that carry phosphorus.
Yeah.
Um,
Basically, well, I'll just look at the calcium magnesium ratios and then just see what is missing. In some cases, both. In which case, I've got to add. And then, as an aside, I'll look at the sulfur and sodium because I can get hold of those reasonably easy. Like with
yeah,
the calcium, it'd be lime, and then kieserite for the magnesium and the sulfur. And
yeah,
then,
exactly. So this test, you want to build this test with lime. The saturated paste test is going to respond faster to gypsum, of course, because it's more soluble. The magnesium, yeah, like say kieserite. This magnesium is very low. So another thing might be do some tissue tests if you're versed in that. I'm not really versed in looking at tissue tests. SAP tests is another option.
Yeah.
We've got a bit more experience to see what is needed in the sap of the pasture or whatever it is, or the arable crop.
Right.
All of these major cations are low, right?
Right.
I'm sure you know that, and
Yeah.
they need it. It looks like they would do a lot of good if you started to build those major cations first.
Yeah.
Probably starting with calcium, trying to get these numbers up, and also the solubility up. But yeah, all of them really: magnesium, potassium, sodium. So maybe polysulfate might be a thing, like lime sulfate, something like that. Since it's kind of a good spread of the major cations and it's quite soluble, so it's pretty fast acting.
A bit of background. They used to keep polo ponies. They used to winter polo ponies from Cowdray Estate in Sussex,
Right.
and keep about 100 of them over. Of course, completely trashed the soil, but the money was bloody good. And I saw them first made contact over a year ago, 2 years probably. And I said, you know, this is not a great idea. And they knew that, but they had to cover the costs, which they managed to do. So they kicked the polo ponies out, but now they're in the business of repairing the soils, which is where I've got involved.
Yeah.
So that's good. But
I'm sure you'd improve the health of the animals by improving these major cations, you know, like mammals like a bit more sodium than maybe that's making it into the plants in this environment.
Calcium is so important as well.
Yeah, the calcium, and you know, like all the arable crops, barley and stuff is gonna be quite diminutive in that environment, I would have thought.
Yeah. But weirdly, I did my infamous jam jar test. There's something I can do there and then with the client. And I did the 4 fields, and 2 are really dark and 2 are really light. And the ones that are really dark is where the drier, sandier fields, the first 2, helicopter and mid sandy. And the animals were outwintered on there. And I said, well, obviously the organic matter is higher on these and lower on the others because the other ones are wet 9 months of the year and you can't get the animals on. The bloody exact opposite has turned out. So, but I can the thing I can see happening there is the cation exchange, or the total exchange capacity, is not functioning. So the nutrients are there, and it's enough to make it look pretty in the jam jar, but they're just going through, as we appreciate with the sandy soil. Whereas the clay has held on to stuff over history and what have you.
Exactly, and when the soils get low solubility, like those major cations are low in solubility, they're not showing up on the saturated paste test. So those saturated paste tests are very low soluble salt. So the soluble salts figure is an overall look at the amount of nutrition in the soil solution. So they're really low. And what usually happens there is exactly what's happened on those saturated paste tests. Aluminium becomes a bit more soluble, and so does iron. So the solubility of your iron is really high, and the solubility of aluminium is maybe a little bit too high. And I think once you start to correct calcium, magnesium, potassium, and even sodium in this case, then the solubility of that aluminium will start to go down as the pH goes up slightly. And it might balance out, you know, like if you would keep working on it, they might get to like 6.2 pH when you get enough calcium about. And then once 6.2 happens, aluminium will shut down. And you know, the other trace minerals will usually start to show up a bit more. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens.
What I used to do with the phosphates was I had a figure that was soluble, and then in the cation exchange figure as well. So you could say one was total and one was plant available. Is that the case with the saturated paste then? And
that's the plant available one, yeah.
The saturated paste is?
Yeah, but it still has a kind of cation percentage breakdown, which is slightly different. But it's still useful to see for sure.
Right.
Trying to get that calcium up on that one is super important. I mean, it's important on this one too, but it definitely works faster when you start to get the solubility up on the saturated paste test. Yeah. Whereas this one is the exchangeable. There is no true total analysis here. You know, there's no like to completely dissolve everything in the soil sample. There's only the exchangeable nutrients and the water. The soil solution, water soluble nutrients, like the plant available ones.
Yeah. So
or maybe just continue growing like this and harvest the plants and smelt them for aluminium.
Use them to mine aluminium,
yeah. But there was the iron was high, very high. I assume because it's trapped by the compaction. So there was compaction for the overwintered fields, as you'd expect. There was compaction in the other fields, and rape field with compaction was much lower. Was a plough pan, and it was quite surprising. But so obviously the advice is to aerate, but there was compaction at about 6 inches, which they were just about get, and the other one was 15 inches. But there was iron. There was obviously rusty iron in there. So I wasn't surprised to see the iron exaggerated, the figure very high.
Yeah, I guess because it actually, you know, like although there's lots of rusty iron there, there's probably, because it's compacted, there's probably a lot of reduced iron there as well, maybe from like fermentative microbes. So you might be getting some siderophores that are chelating it, getting it into solution as well. Because it is the one trace mineral that's high. On the saturated paste test, the manganese is a bit low, you know, you could use a bit more. The copper's low, the zinc's low, but the iron's fine. On this test, definitely that copper would, you know, if you're doing arable crops and you want them to be more resistant to pests and disease and stuff, then getting that copper up might be handy. It's quite low.
So are there targets for the saturated paste test?
Yeah, I can put that into
a
sheet for you as well. I just didn't want to blast your mind with so much data in the first thing, but I'm sure you're quite used to looking at those numbers. The other key thing is there's no molybdenum. I put 0 on this sheet, but it says below 0.02, which is below the registered amount on, you know, the registerable amount on the test. So molybdenum would help with the whole nitrogen use efficiency thing.
Isn't that locked up by high iron?
Yeah, it can be, yeah. And also acidic soils is more available in like slightly alkali soils like 7.1 or 7.2 or something. Is actually better for molybdenum. But you can just like foliar it on, you know, into the crop. It's quite you know, it's quite readily soluble as sodium molybdate, and the plants will take it up pretty rapidly. So instead of trying to shift the soil levels, if that's, you know, going to be really expensive and they're not up for spending that much money, then maybe foliars is better.
Yeah, well, it's just the simple things. I mean, they're short of cash. They're not doing a lot of farming really, of stock. It's all grass. So it'd just be aerating, sward lifting, maybe liming, and kieserite, and maybe some sodium. But also, I'd be looking at putting in some minerals. I can do the minerals and just make sure it's appertaining to these results really, except everything to
Yeah,
be
where you've got
addressed
low
apart from
sodium like that as well, you got the benefit of you can use like sea products liberally, like fish and seaweed and
seaweed. Yeah,
fermented seawater, anything that they could get locally and utilize. You've got a
yeah.
headroom to use that, so that might help.
That would be great. Is there a microbial activity indicator at all?
No, not on these tests. No,
No.
there's no no, there's no like respiration or anything like that.
Right.
We use the Haney test from Reading Ag Labs for that,
That's
as
that.
well as
Yeah.
as well as microscopy and all the stuff we use.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the calcium, no, the carbon, nitrogen to carbon ratios. Is that, can you work it out from these sheets?
Only through organic matter, although I guess
Yeah.
these organic matters are a bit more reliable than maybe like compost, because they don't have huge chunks of compost in them. But there's no.
But that would be only on the soluble test, right? On the paste saturated paste test, not on here.
Right.
What's carbon to nitrogen?
Yeah.
No, we only see that on the Haney test. There's no carbon to nitrogen on the.
So no, this wouldn't include really anything like that. Are you actually thinking of sort of the exchangeable pools or the available pools, not like the total pools of carbon and nitrogen?
Yeah, what's available? Yeah, I mean it's here, isn't it? As estimated nitrogen release N per acre. I don't know if I.
Yeah, that's based off the organic matter. Yeah.
Oh,
So
right.
roughly, if you're below 5% organic matter, I think they say you can get about 40 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year, and then as you get above 10, you can get like over 100 or something. Yeah, something like that. I can send you the table of interpretation for the estimated nitrogen release. It's based on organic matter, yeah, and it's based on organic matter and what the exchangeable nitrogen is, but across the field with all these samples is very low, right? There's it's like organically farmed land. There's basically
yes.
there's not a buildup of available nitrogen.
There's not a lot gone on these fields apart from compaction and abuse, I think.
Yeah. Definitely looks a bit like that. It looks like it was probably pretty low fertility when it started, and and it's probably been made worse by the horses.
Bonfire is one that grows the most grass for some reason.
Well, it's got the highest calcium on this test.
Yes,
that's pretty significant.
Yes. And then the others are sort of underwater. The ones that aren't dry are sort of still underwater now. So yeah, not great. And what does the melic mean? What is that? Where does that come
Melic
from?
3 is just the extractant that they use. So it's the it's an acid extractant.
Right.
So it's not so good to use in the southeast of the UK with like really calcium heavy soils with like lots of free lime, lots of free carbonate in it, because the acid will get thrown off by that. So for those soils, we use the ammonium acetate 8.2 because it gives a more representative calcium figure. If you use the Malic 3 on those soils, generally it gets thrown off, and it suggests more than what is actually there on the exchange sites.
Right. Okay, that's a great help. Thanks very much.
No worries. I'll get that saturated paste test thing done for you and send you that.
Great.
The caveat for that is, some of the targets that the Americans give are just not, they're never going to be achievable at scale. So maybe achievable in the furrow, if you were doing arable and someone had like a lot of equipment that was designed to put nutrients and microbes in the furrow, then you could concentrate on there. But they seem a bit high, and basically what you need to start is just sufficiency, just trying to get the paste test to look better, get more soluble salts, rather than worry too much about the targets to begin with. Just sufficiency, especially where the TEC on this test is below 10. We're just
Yes.
looking
Yeah.
for sufficiency rather than messing about with trying to get a perfect balance of nutrition,
No,
Balance
no,
matters
let it all come organically, so to speak. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, cool.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Yeah.
No worries.
I've built that Johnson Sue with a farmer friend down the road. It hasn't heated up, and obviously I don't think we put enough nitrogen into it. The FYM we put in there was quite sloppy, and some leaf clippings, hedge clippings, which were Leylandii. But yeah, if it's not heating up, then I suppose it's going to be a slow brew, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need for them to heat up. You can just throw
No.
loads of worms at them, and within a year they will process, and it'll make great material.
Yeah, we included some worms. There was some in the material we put in. So yeah,
Yeah, I bet to say it was horse manure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and some horse manure, and yeah, put some horse manure and muck and cow muck as well.
Yeah, usually that's carrying loads of the composted worms anyway, isn't it? So
Yeah, that's right. That was in there. Yeah, great stuff.
yeah,
And
it's a big
just
one,
keep the
you'd
moisture
say.
levels up around 70, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's generally a little bit too wet personally,
Yeah,
and you don't need to worry that much as long as it's best just put it in a sheltered place, like on the north side of a building, where it's
yeah,
not going to get blasted with the sun or wind or anything.
yeah.
I don't think you need it to be 70%, but
No,
yeah, 60 is good, like
yeah,
just as long as it's moist all around the pile and the bottom's not getting dry and the edges aren't really dry,
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
basically the more consistent you can make the moisture, the more
Mm.
consistent the end product will be,
All
you
right.
know,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Okay.
place to
Great.
place, and that's
Yeah.
really the aim of the game, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah. Great stuff. Oh, thanks very much.
If you just wanted
No
to
worries.
heat it up, just collect all your pee and just dump it all at once.
Yeah, start hitting
Sorry.
it with some fish or something, or blood.
Yeah, milk.
No, Adam's right. Just basically collect all of your blood, basically, and use that
All right.
personal touch. It's called.
Elaine was banging on about blood when I met her in America. She was saying that's a good way to get temperature up quickly. Bit of blood meal in
Oh
water,
yeah.
but you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it with the static stuff.
No, you don't.
No.
For static
No.
composting, it's really unnecessary.
As long as there's loads of
Yeah.
worms in there, they'll get it done.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you seen our little thing about were you doing the presentation about straw nitrogen that we did?
Oh, that's well worth seeing, Clyde, if you haven't seen
Oh
it.
yeah. Right. Is that on YouTube or?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Right.
It's
Okay.
the latest or one of the latest videos on my YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
It's what, half an hour and then half an hour of questions, and it's an interesting potential if you're working with arable farmers.
Yeah.
So farmers,
Yeah.
it's less relevant, but for arable farmers, it's interesting.
Yeah. And so I've mentioned you guys quite a few times in our reports of the Soil Association Exchange Program. So
We've got them, yeah.
and there's a few
Nice.
farmers in Hampshire that haven't heard of you. I can't believe it.
Well, all farmers are in their own little worlds, aren't they? Don't get
Yeah.
that much
Yeah.
done.
There's a great guy over at towards Newbury, Dan Willis. He's doing some great stuff. He's been direct drilling for 20 years, and he's actually got something to show for it. You see what I mean? From the soil. I put some things up on Instagram recently, but the soil biology that's going on there is really good.
What's your Instagram, Clyde? Just make sure I've got you.
I'm a crazy ass, but yeah. So
Crazy
some, yeah.
That's amazing.
He's put in some wheat and rye and wheat. He couldn't decide which, so he did it as a trial, and the root association has been really good. But yeah, he's got a pretty good agronomist. I can't think who it is at the moment, but he's yeah, because quite often they'll just go direct drill and think, well, I've done that, I'll tick that box, and then not change the agronomy, and they're still using all the rubbish they've used before.
Yeah, and that can be they can fall down on that actually.
Yeah,
because the soil's compacted, and then you keep adding the synthetic fertilizer, it just burns off the organic matter. So
that's right. That's right. Right, great stuff. Thanks very
Oh.
much, guys.
Sounds good.
Um,
Talk about it on Insta.
yeah, I'll get some more tests off to you soon as. I've got some
Nice. And if you want to see a if you want to see an example of that Haney test with the water soluble carbon and nitrogen, I can send you one of them.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, thanks very much.
Sounds good.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh,
sounds
yeah.
sounds
Thanks a lot.
we've done in half an hour, which is great.
Cheers, Nelly. Yes. Half right.
Efficient,
Rate,
that's what we
exactly.
like.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
great then.
No problem.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.